Hi, this is TrackD, AI Product Management, and today is part 3 where we are going to look at AI UX and how human in the loop can help us solve these problems at scale using AI. And we are going to very particularly look at the user experience built around AI, because when AI comes into picture, there is a lot of trust, reliability, and the answer being deterministic in nature all go for a toss. So how do we design for a system that is confidently wrong some of the time, and in many cases many of the times? So how do we calibrate the trust? That's what we are going to look at today. And these are the hard problems in user experience, especially with AI. And these are epistemic, as in understanding what is being given is more problematic than the visual UI elements alone. Yeah, because the system is wrong and it is calmly giving you the answer, and it is confidently giving you that answer. You don't know when it is right, when it is wrong. You look at the same answer and you think it is right, but somewhere deep down you know that it is wrong as well. So the traditional UX assumes correctness, as in if we are showing something on the UI, it assumes that it is correct. Yeah, buttons, everything are designed in such a way that it's for deterministic data. So when probabilistic data comes, how do we show that data? And that's why AI UX is more like a trust calibration. You're saying that, hey, I've generated this data using AI. Now user should understand whether we should rely on that or not rely on that. And that is moment to moment, as in across the system we need to be very deliberate about showing what is generated by UI, how much is generated, what's the confidence, and what can the user do given that data. Yeah, and that's why human in the loop, HITL, that we call, is very important. So we'll look at some structure here instead of just uh, talking about this. We'll look at what's really happening. And in this roadmap, you're going to touch about the core problem. Hey, building AI UX is more about trust calibration. We need to ensure that users do not lose trust. Yeah, and we are communicating with uncertainty. Yeah, answer has come from AI, but is it trustworthy? Human in the loop. So we cannot day zero put AI in the loop and say that AI will take over. Human has to be in the loop for certain scenarios where where the chances of failure is large, the blast radius is high, commercials are involved, the chances of failure are critical. Yeah, system should not fail. In those cases we would be deterministic, whereas in the loops where system can do on its own, like research, summarize, we can be the out of the loop person. Yeah, so what does that spectrum look like from where fully human is in command to human is out of the loop? We are going to look at that. Interaction patterns, designing for error. What happens when something goes wrong? How do we surface that error, especially in the context of AI? We are going to look at system view. How do we build a feedback flywheel, because that is going to be the system's moat. Without a feedback flywheel, we will never know whether we have built the right solution to the problem, and if users are using it, they trust it, they do not trust it. Yeah, how does that how can that be done using latency, streaming, and what is the perceived quality by the end users? Then finally we'll package everything into a spec. Okay. Yeah, remember, we are not designing a chat box, we are designing where humans sit, how uncertainty is shown to them because everything is probabilistic in nature here, and how errors are caught and fixed. Yeah, and how every interaction makes the system better, which is the last part, feedback flywheel. This brings us to the first part, the core problem. Remember this, AI is giving us probabilistic results, that is fluent and confident whether or not it is right. It is always giving us answer confidently. It could be right, it could be wrong. And that's why we say there are two failure modes, and both should be owned by product managers. One, under reliance. Yeah, we see that users ignore correct AI help, whereas over reliance, user rubber stamps everything without checking what AI has given us. Yeah, and the cause is user does not understand what is given, because it is wrong too often. There is no explanation associated. So user under reliance or relies on AI. Over reliance is because there is too smooth UX. There is no friction shown, confident tone, because we are showing confidently, user rubber stamps and goes to the next level. So these are the causes. We should create intentional friction to avoid this over reliance. And with under reliance, the we have built a very costly feature. The ROI becomes zero because the feature is unused. Whereas here, there are so many errors reaching customer that trust becomes a challenge now, because user has used automation bias. He's fallen to the he's fallen to the prey that he's fallen prey to the point that AI has generated something confidently, so it should be correct. Yeah. How do we fix this? Here we can show some credibility. We show citations, we show the accuracy, where user can easily verify the data and so on. Whereas over reliance, we create friction, calibrated friction at high stake points, and we show the uncertainty. You would have seen this in AI LLMs, where at the bottom it says very clearly, ChatGPT is an AI. Generated response could be hallucinated wrong at sometimes. Please review or check or validate on your own as well. So that's a message shown. And why is that shown? For the very reason that these LLMs, our users could over rely on the answer given by LLMs. And that's what we are saying. Sometimes good UX adds friction on purpose. Yeah, for example, one click approve on a low stakes draft is okay, but one click approve on a high value action is a disaster. $50,000 refund needs to be given to a customer. AI has said please give. User clicks with a confirmation bias, $50,000 is gone. So how do we control that? How do we show intentional friction? How do we ask the user to recheck everything? Yeah, we need to ask the user to slow down precisely for these high stake scenarios. And that's the interface of maybe. Whenever the output is being very probabilistic in nature, we need to ensure that we show confidence signals. Hey, I have generated something with very high confidence versus I have generated an answer with low confidence. User, can you please review this? Yeah. Or ask a question for the user to review it. Citations and grounding. Where did I get the data from? Is there a trusted source? What are the list of trusted sources that I have selected this data from? Yeah. Honesty cues. This is AI generated. Please review. Very visibly somewhere at the bottom. Give options over one answer to the user. If you have three drafts, user can choose one, because we are creating friction there. We are asking the user to go through that intentionally. And that's human in the design seat. Yeah. Here is a very good example. Imagine I'm using an AI assistant to understand the rise of renewable energy adoption in the last decade as part of my research. And I'm using a model. I ask this question, hey, how does this work? I give this question, and it has generated these answers. Firstly, it says very clearly, AI generated, please review the data. Secondly, it tells the confidence. How confident am I about the data, the quality, the sources, and everything? How relevant it is for you, and so on. Yeah, how uncertain certain points are. It tells us very clearly. It also asks us review the sources or ask a follow up question. Yeah. While it says that key facts are reliable, but numbers and future trends should be verified, it states this very clearly. Look at the drafts, three drafts it has generated intentionally with a confidence score given to each, a confidence level given to each: high confidence, medium confidence, low confidence. It tells the points, and at the same time, it gives the sources as well. With a click of a button, you could use any of this draft, but it is forcing, it is creating a friction for you to ask the right questions here instead of blindly trusting AI. Yeah, see here, always on message. AI can make mistakes, verify important information. And at the bottom, it's asking a follow up question or request changes on the data that has been generated, which is very important. That brings us to the second section, which is human in the loop. Where does human sit, yeah, related to the AI output? And putting AI in the workflow is not an answer, as we saw. So there is a spectrum from less to the more autonomy. Autonomy as in system acting on its own. So less autonomy for the system means system is doing something, but human is in command here. Human does the end output. AI is only suggesting. For example, autocomplete. So I can accept or reject it very quickly. Human in the loop. For example, there is a particular workflow to approve something. AI acts only after human approves. Yeah, so human is in the loop when some action needs to be taken. For example, sending a mail, approving a loan, uh, sending a closing a ticket. All of these are human in the loop. Who human on the loop? AI acts, human monitors and can intervene. He is in real time monitoring what's happening with the agents, with the conversations and everything. Human can intervene if required. That are through live dashboards. Finally, human is out of the loop. Some automatic systems are happening. Human only audits samples after the fact. This is live observation versus this being auditing only. For example, spam filtering. System is automatically filtering messages coming to us either to trash or correctly tagging it, and after some duration, a human sits and audits whether a system is doing correctly. So from the less autonomy to the more autonomy, this is increasing autonomy from left to right. So where do we make the human sit? In the command, in the loop, on the loop, out of the loop. Yeah, 4 positions. How do we do that? We do a graph on stakes versus reliability. How reliably we can trust the system. How high are the stakes or low are the stakes with respect to the answers being given by AI. Human in the loop, human in command when there is low reliability but high stakes. Whenever there is high stakes, human has to be in the loop. Yeah, he cannot be outside the loop. So human in command in the loop. If it is high reliability, put him in the loop. If it is low reliability, put it in command very clearly. If it is low stakes, the autonomy increases because the stakes are low, the autonomy increases. You can have on the loop or out of the loop of two options. Again, low reliability, observe. Yeah. But if you need there is high reliability on the system, you get out of the loop, let the system do everything. You take certain samples at a certain checkpoints and only validate it regularly. That's all. Yeah, it's not a switch, it's rather a map. You don't say that, hey, I'll use AI versus I'll not use AI. You use it as a map. How can we configure or fine tune the workflow to what extent AI can use it? Yeah, and getting the placement right is more important. Yeah, that's where a 90% model becomes a product. And if you are wrong, even 99% accurate model will become a liability. Yeah, because we are not put it in the right position. And that brings us to 4 shapes that AI products are typically taking these days. One, we have seen it as a copilot or an assistant. It's typically an in the loop editor. Yeah, we are asking it to code, we are asking it to write emails, draft messages, and all of that. We need to watch out for editing a wrong draft can cost more than writing fresh. Yeah, that's typically known. Yeah, we are saying um, you need not write it from scratch, but if there is editing a wrong draft can actually cost more than writing fresh. Yeah, conversational, when you are talking via dialogue, yeah, it steers via dialogue. It's open-ended exploration or support. Yeah, it's a bad default UI for structured tasks. When we have a structured UI pipeline, or a visual queue or a data pipeline, or some other pipeline, we need to ensure that there are structured tasks created, not just putting a default UI. Agentic in nature, where system goes and runs something and comes back, human needs to be on the loop as a supervisor. Yeah, this will help us cut down on the scope of the automation and ensure that we have scoped the automation really well, because now we understand where human needs to come and review. We need to watch out for compounding errors because agentic AIs continuously run for a long duration on long tasks. They typically need some good checkpoints. every couple of minutes, maybe check where are they, what have they done so far, are they in the right direction. Finally, ambient or embedded, where human is out of the loop. The users typically do not know if human is doing that, or a system is doing that, or a AI is doing that. So you are out of the loop, or human is out of the loop, and humans only audit. So ranking, defaults, autocomplete, these are best scenarios, because nobody needs to know whether AI is doing it, human is doing it, or deterministic system is doing it. We need to always watch out for these invisible errors, and monitoring is a good thing. um, Not just throwing a UI in the front. Okay. um, Chat is not the goal, it is often the laziest choice. Yeah, everybody tries to make it conversational in nature, so that's the laziest choice. The best AI UX hides the AI inside an existing workflow, so that users don't know whether there is a person doing it, there is a AI doing it, and so on. Yeah, not making it visible, making it seamless, is is the is the mark of a good AI product. And not just for the happy path, even error design needs to be looked at very seriously in this case. Yeah, it's not an edge case, it's rather the main event. Gracefully failing, if you ask AI to do something and it's not able to do, it should hand it off to a human, or fall back to a deterministic path. Yeah, and clearly say that, hey, I cannot do this reliably, can you take or can I escalate this to a human, or pass it on to a human who can come and do that task for you. Yeah, easy correction and undo. User should be able to go back and correct the data, or the email, or the system's output reliably. If he is not able to do that, or not able to reverse a task done by AI, then it becomes uh, uh, a liability. Yeah, user is now trying to do something, AI has done something, now he's not able to reverse it. Feedback capture. Anytime a user accepts or rejects, keeps the edit versus discarded, we need to capture this data, because this can help us in training and generating the eval signals later. Progressive disclosure. Always try to start small and progressively show more and more data, so that users can build accurate mental model of what's happening. Yeah, don't start throwing all the data at the user at once. Users will be bombarded with such information, and they'll not typically use it. So the trust factor and over knowledge sharing also is not required at certain points of time. Errors are frequent, silent, and confident. We looked at that. Yeah, and that brings us to system view. Hey, how is UX not a decoration? Okay, it's a defensibility, and it can rescue the model underneath. How we are going to look at that? By building a feedback loop. We just saw that here. We just saw how feedback loops like thumbs ups, edits kept are discarded, edits accepted versus discarded, accept or reject models. All this help us get the data on whether AI is helping them or not, and that data can be used to train or improve the model going forward. Yeah. So, for example, streaming is one way that we have solved this problem of users waiting on certain data. So showing tokens as they generate cuts perceived wait, even though the total time is still the same. Yeah. Imagine AI generates and it takes 6 seconds to generate the complete data, but immediately the streaming starts, we are showing the first token there itself, and that is a good UX, for the very reason that users are now seeing it as not a delay, but rather, hey, something's happening, let me start reading. Yeah. Optimistic UI and progress show the system retrieving the data and thinking, so the user's wait feels purposeful. Hey, I'm waiting on the answer to come. Yeah. Set expectations. Hey, this might take a moment and will beat an unexplained pause, because sometimes these LLMs go through a lot of reasoning, and in reasoning they use a lot of steps, sub agents or agents, and so on, and that would mean that answer could be delayed by sometimes a couple of minutes also. So how do they say? They're saying, hey, I'm thinking, this might take a moment, I've gone out to research the world, and so on. So set expectations very clearly with the user. Yeah. And here's a very deep point, guys, that we need to understand. A slightly less accurate model with better UX often beats a more accurate model with worse UX. Yeah, because users experience at the end of the day, humans are at the other end, and if they are not able to perceive the capability with trust and confidence of uh, the product, they will drop, and that's that's very challenging state to be in. So always think about how can I improve the UX of the product with respect to the capability of the model also. And bringing all this together, yeah, how do we spec it out? We already attached one AI PRD, if you remember last time in the last part 2. This part 3 is about adding everything related to user experience. Yeah, we need to very clearly tell, hey, what will the interaction pattern be? Is it copilot, conversational, agentic, ambient, or hidden? Ambient or hidden, and why? Yeah, where in the existing workflow are we embedding it? Human in the loop map. Yeah, we looked at the stretch of autonomy on the spectrum, a lower autonomy to highest autonomy. How do we do that? In command, human in loop, human on the loop, human out of the loop. Yeah, how does that happen? Uncertainty communication. Yeah, there are certain confidence signals that we need to show to the user how confident AI is about the data. We need to show where did AI fetch that data from, citations of sources, honesty cues, having multiple options versus a single answer. Trust calibration design. Hey, where friction is added, high stakes, and remove at low stakes. So, how do we calibrate for a particular workflow pipeline's action? Yeah, wherein does human sit? Yeah, is it in the loop, on the loop, uh, out of the loop, or in command? That happens through your stakes versus reliability. We saw that quadrants. Error and UX recovery. Error and recovery UX. Yeah, we need to ensure that we fail gracefully, our user is able to undo it, and there is a fallback to a deterministic system. Yeah, if these are not part of your requirements, engineering will not build it. Customers will have a high time trusting the system, because every time it goes wrong, it's gonna fail. So we need to plan for that very specifically here. Yeah, and feedback capture, because that becomes your moat. How do we create that flywheel that keeps feeding itself? Latency and perception. You can do streaming, you can show the progress, you can set the expectations. Yeah, answer is being generated, I'm thinking, I as AI, I'm thinking, and so on. Trust migration plan, how the human moves out of the loop as evidence accrues, yeah, through feedback collection. And this is also about moving the user, or AI, in that autonomy control. More and more AI, as we add it, human moves out of the loop. You design for confident wrongness, yeah, not for the confident rightness. So this is taking a not, I wouldn't say a negative take on what AI generates, but what we are saying is, hey, how can we design for system that might go wrong very confidently? Yeah, we looked at feature altitude, product altitude, and business altitude earlier. Yeah, business altitude is typically UX is a defensibility and a rescue. Yeah, the feedback flywheel, we looked at it. How do we capture the data and improve the model? And we are saying interaction quality is the strategy there. Product altitude, we are looking at human in the loop map. So where does the human sit for every action that is being performed in the workflow? Yeah, how does, where does human sit? Yeah, and how do they migrate out? How do they get out of the loop? Yeah, that's 90% of the model is a product or a liability. Yeah, feature altitude, how do we ensure that the trust is calibrated, the uncertainty signals are accounted for, and calibrated friction are the only elements that we will fight for. These are the three elements that we will fight for. So we need to be very careful on how we design the whole solution. And this brings us to the misconceptions that we as product managers need to avoid. AI UX means a chat box. Typically, no. It's often the laziest choice that a product manager or an engineering team can take. Good UX removes all friction. Ideally, no. It keeps some of the friction or calibrates for friction for good UX. Show one confident answer. No. Typically, we should show multiple answers, because confirmation bias or automation bias will come in, and users will rubber stamp the whole solution. Confidence scores are trustworthy. they are often miscalibrated. We need to recalibrate them regularly. Human in the loop is crutch? No, it is deliberate design decision that a product manager takes, because if human is not in the loop, the chances that system could auto approve something that it should not are high. System could close the tickets even though the ticket is not resolved, and so on. So human in the loop is not a crutch, it's a design decision or a choice. Yeah, it's chosen per action based on what is happening in the workflow or the loop. This is taken. Feedback UI is nice to have. No, it could be a moat. It is the data flywheel that we have to build to gather data on whether what we have built is being used or not. A more accurate model always wins. No, UX determines the trust and adoption. So a combination of good UX and average model will always win over average UX and best model. So we need to design for users uh, from the beginning. Some important interview questions that could be asked is, hey, design the UX for a feature that is wrong 10% of the time. How do we start with that? Okay, start from the stakes and the reliability or reversibility, not the visuals, and ensure that you surface the uncertainty with which the data is being shown, very visible on the UI. Add friction at risky moments. Ask the user to review. Ask the user to choose between three options. Make correction very trivial. Yeah, user should be able to correct these answers with easy questions or edit it in place and so on. And we need to migrate the human out only when reliability earns it. Yeah, if 90% of the 99% of the cases fall in that 90% of the time, then we are good. But if they fall in 10% of the time, we are wrong. So we the autonomy spectrum that we just saw needs to be very carefully chosen as we progress with the product or the solution. So what is automation bias and how does UX address it? So whenever AI generates responses, humans over trust it and rubber stamp it, saying that, hey, I have approved. Yeah, this will lead to scenarios where humans have approved something that was not to be approved in the first place. So machine has given a confident output which is wrong in this case. So we need to fight this with calibrated friction. We need to ensure that users can very easily verify the sources and also have an option to edit and approve on top. When is a human in the loop or out of the loop? So whenever the stakes are high, if the stakes are high, human needs to be in the loop. When the stakes are low, human need not be in the loop. If the reliability of the system is high, you can let the system do on its own. And if the reliability is low, you need to bring in human. Yeah, so we looked at the quadrants there: high low reliability versus high low stakes. Where does human sit? Why is streaming important and how does UX create a mode? Streaming improves the perceived latency because the token immediately generates, we are able to see that value. And sometimes you can always say that, hey, I'm thinking. Yeah, even that drives your trust and retention of the customers. So that's more important. And UX creates a mode when we have the feedback flywheel, which turns interaction into labeled data for us to compete with the competitors and also improve our own models. And this is the vocabulary that we owned as part of this session. We looked at what was the one core idea. AI UX is a trust calibration. It's not just pitching a chat box. Core problem is users under or over rely on data. How can we build for trust calibration, uncertainty communication, and miscalibrated confidence? Human in the loop and patterns, we looked at it. Human in command, human in the loop, human on the loop, human out of the loop. Placement per action and migration, we looked at it. System and artifact, we looked at how humans can do error design. How do we design for errors? The feedback flywheel, which could be which is a moat if done right. The streaming and perceived latency, where we can stream the content and so on. And the 8 section AI UX HITL spec. That's what we looked at. And that brings us, yeah, you could do a practice of your own, how to draw the HITL maps and all. But that brings us to a close on part 3 of track D, which is AIPM. Calibrate for trust, not maximum trust. Yeah, how much human in the loop is needed? That answer needs very precise interest of the product manager. Thank you.